let's do this.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the first official podcast for the Panel of Amateurs. I'm Terry.
And I'm Peter.
Today on the Panel of Amateurs, we're going to be reviewing our thoughts on the Magnificent Seven, as well as the TV shows and cartoons, books, the like that we watched growing up.
All right, so let's get this started. Theme song goes here. Don't forget to put the theme song here.
So earlier in the week, Peter posted on our Facebook page a question about what TV shows, cartoons, things like that in the genre that you watched growing up. And we got a few answers. We're going to give our own, as well as what some of our followers put out there.
So what we're going to do is we're going to read down the list of responses from our listeners. I guess you guys are pre-listeners, so thanks for showing up beforehand. But we'll read down the list, and then we will kind of give our thoughts about those shows as well. So the first one that was given to us was Power Rangers, the original, obviously not Dino Thunder or whatever. What is it now? I don't even know.
There's probably been like 20 incarnations of it at this point.
Yeah, it's like Power Rangers Through Time and dinosaurs, and there's a ninja one that's like they have different helmets now. It
really blends at this point. I couldn't even tell you what they've done since the original. I watched the original growing up. I didn't find out till later on that in the original Power Rangers, the actors were not the same actors from the action sequences. They pulled those from the original Japanese version, and then they just put in the American actors to tell a story later on.
I did not know that.
They do that. I hear they do that with a lot of those Japanese shows that they were bringing over at the time.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Sucks to be the American actors that kind of get shifted on that. But so next on the list is a show called Out of the Box.
I have no clue what that's about.
No idea. I feel like it is a show on Nickelodeon and or PBS. Probably Nickelodeon. I think it's a Nick Jr. show. I never watched it. Sorry.
Couldn't tell you what time it came out, when. Nothing. Know nothing about that one.
All right.
Moving on.
Wild Thornberrys. Now that's a really great show. Did you ever watch Wild Thornberrys growing up?
I did. I can't say I spent a lot of time watching it, but I have seen the show before.
Well, you see, growing up for me, I always wanted to talk to animals. Dr. Dolittle was a great film for me when I was a kid. Right. And so this show just kind of kept that going and personified that through that girl with the glasses and the pigtails. I can't remember her name. And I have IMDb access, and I'm not going to use it to find out what her name is. So,
now I do remember the show. I just, we growing up in my household, we watched a lot of your action shows, the real Ghostbusters, Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, stuff like that. Ninja Turtles was huge in our household. Not only did we have the DVDs of the movies and the cartoons, and I say DVDs as if they were actual DVDs at those times.
Definitely VHS.
They were definitely VHS. But we had all those things, and we had the 12-inch Ninja Turtle figures, and every single turtle, and every single bad guy, the Shredder. We even had the Baxter Stockman and the little bitty Mauser things. We had all of those things growing up. So much so that we would get bored of playing Ninja Turtles, and we would turn them into football players. So we'd line them up on each side. We'd make jerseys out of whatever paper products we could find, whether it was our schoolwork, which we probably shouldn't have been doing, but we were wrapping them in our homework and different things like that. Aluminum foil. Anything we could figure to do something else or to further turn our Ninja Turtles into quarterbacks and basketball players. Everything. That was a huge one in our household.
Yeah, and those are some of the ones on the list too. Is definitely Batman the animated series, the Spider-Man animated series that was on Fox. Those are ones that I grew up watching as well. More the X-Men though. I spent every Saturday morning watching X-Men. I also woke up very early on a daily basis to watch Pokemon before school. That was a thing that I did because that's what I like. I like Pokemon. I'm okay with it. I play Pokemon Go, and I'm not sad about it.
I'll be honest with you. I play Pokemon Go, but I hated Pokemon when I was growing up. I couldn't understand it. I didn't enjoy the card games. None of it. I was strictly Superman, Batman, X-Men we loved. Like you said, we woke up every Saturday morning to catch the X-Men, catch Batman versus Superman when they combined the Batman, the animated series, and Superman.
It was the Adventures of Batman and Superman, yeah. It was called, I believe, yeah.
It was right after they done a few episodes where they combined the two or they met up, which is one of my favorite episodes. Although I'm going to tell you right now, I hated the fact that they always had to put Batman on the same level as Superman. There's one scene where Batman throws Clark across a room. It almost killed my childhood. Like, Batman used to do this super kick at the end of every episode, and he got Superman with it. And I was just, I hated Batman for a few years. After that, I just couldn't understand why he always had to win, no matter who he went up against.
That's because, Batman's just a regular guy. And think about if you're a kid watching a regular guy get beaten up and you think, oh, I'm just a regular guy. I'm never going to be as good as Superman. But if they, they turn the story around, make Batman better than Superman, then it's okay to be a regular guy. Then they can program you to be a normal person.
I get it, but they were wrong.
Yeah, they were wrong.
They were completely wrong. I don't care what story you tell. There's no way if these characters, if you're in that universe, that it should even be a match. And one day we'll talk about the actual movie and how horrendously bad it was.
Yeah.
But
today's not that day.
Today's not that day. But I will tell you that Batman shouldn't have stood a chance in that show, and he shouldn't have stood a chance on the big screen.
So back to the list, there are quite a lot of suggestions here to talk about. But one thing I noticed that on the Facebook, I could really tell who had cable growing up and who didn't, because one of our listeners, all of his suggestions came from Nickelodeon, and another one all came from WB, and that's what I had growing up, was all like WB, Fox, and NBC. So here's a list of shows you may or may not have seen. Hey Dude.
Yep.
Okay, that was a good one. Salute Your Shorts.
Watched that a lot growing up.
Yeah. I was at work the other day, and I started singing the Salute Your Shorts theme song, mainly the part where it says, I hope we never part, and the other kid says, you make me want to fart. It's a great part of the theme song. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's YouTube, 2016. Good luck. Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold is obviously a great show from Nickelodeon. But one of the ones that kind of surprised me was Star Trek: The Next Generation. Because we asked what you watched as a kid. I watched Star Trek as a kid because that's what my mom watched, and so Captain Picard is definitely the captain that I follow. So sorry to all of you who do not like Picard. I would just say to you, make it so.
Well, see, I think early on with Star Trek, it was one of those things where, as a kid, the Star Trek: The Next Generation looked better.
Yeah.
As an adult, I can go back and watch the older Star Treks, and I couldn't do that as a kid. It's the same thing with MASH. I used to hate it hearing that MASH theme song and then it coming on at the end of the night, because it was boring TV to me at a young age. Now I can watch those shows and I get the humor, and I think that's a big part of it, is that you may not have understood those topics at the time when you were watching those shows. And also, kind of like you, where you were watching it with your parents, I was doing the same thing. So, at that time, my parents are watching the show, I'm falling in watching the show, so I know more about Captain Picard than I do any of the other captains on the Enterprise.
Right. And even beyond the Enterprise with the Star Trek Voyager, did you ever watch that series?
I watched a few episodes. By the time it came out, I was kind of moving on with that genre.
That's fine. That's okay. You came back eventually, so
I did come back eventually.
Don't worry about it.
I really enjoy the new movies.
Yeah, definitely the new film. And we'll talk about those for sure. Right. There's a lot to compare and contrast with those. Another one on the list is Are You Afraid of the Dark? Now, I didn't watch that show as a kid, mainly because I am afraid of the dark. So that doesn't work out too well. But I did find them on YouTube recently, and they hold up pretty well, some of them. The content is on the creepy side of life, I would say.
Well, and see, I wasn't necessarily afraid of the Are You Afraid of the Dark series. I will tell you that there was an episode of The Real Ghostbusters that scared the daylights out of me. And I don't know if you've started watching the Stranger Things on Netflix yet, but there was a scene in there where it reminded me of something I actually did as a child. So there was an episode with the boogeyman. He lived in the closet. He had this green mohawk, and he came out and he was like half horse at the bottom. So I can remember watching this episode by myself one night. And the next day I had to go to school. And about every time I came home, I was probably home for about 30 minutes before anyone else got there. And I sat in class all day long making paper weapons because I'm not going in this house after watching that episode without a way to defend
without
myself.
some kind of defenses,
So
obviously.
if you remember, it's like origami ninja stars, and I'm taping paper together, making nunchucks, all those things. And my parents came back to the house one day, and I'm sitting on the porch because even with all my battle armor, my paper battle armor, I am not going in the house. And it probably took a week for them to figure out that why is he sitting on the steps every single time we get back to the house. And I was not going in that house. Didn't care. Didn't want to hear it. Until my mom said, well, at this point, if you're not going in there, you're not watching any TV with anything scary in it. So it was one of those things where I know what you're saying when it comes to being scared as a child. And I don't know what it was because I look back at that thing now and it is the most ridiculous character
Right.
I've ever seen. But it scared the daylights out of me as a kid.
The best part of that story, though, is that you were making all these paper weapons at school and no one stopped you.
That was a different day.
Yeah,
You can't. It's not something. Not going to suggest that for kids nowadays. You probably don't want to make throwing stars and
throwing stars is going
nunchucks
to get you suspended, probably, especially when they're made out of paper. It's very threatening. Right. Well, there's a couple more on the list. It's a very, very long list, actually. So thank you guys for all your suggestions. But the one I want to talk about real fast is Doug. Did you ever watch Doug?
I did watch Doug. I like Doug a lot.
Doug is one of my favorite shows, definitely as a kid. But even now, I recently found them online. Got to watch all 4 seasons again, and the morals that it teaches you. It's very important. Also, he thinks that he's a superhero. That's the best part. So I think that we should all start wearing our underwear on the outside of our shorts, and we can be superheroes. We'll be good.
And that is one I am going to suggest for you kids. Go to school tomorrow, underwear on the outside, even you adults listening. Go to work, underwear on the outside. Nobody's going to think differently. They all know Doug did it.
Yeah, wear your belt on your head. Just say it's Quailman Day. If I can dress up like a pirate and get free donuts at Krispy Kreme, then I should be able to dress up like Quailman on the 27th of September. That's the thing. 27th of September is forever now Quailman Day, and we should celebrate it.
You should also put down in the comments section what happened when you did that. I'd love to hear the stories and even some pictures of you going to work in your underwear.
On the outside.
On the outside of your Hey, if you're gonna go to work in your underwear, send that too.
Yeah. But
keep it tone it down for the kids on the channel.
yeah, definitely. So that's our most of our list. There's some others that I never saw. Like Samurai Pizza Cats. Is that a show that you watched ever?
No.
I've never heard of that.
Some of these people have more than cable because that's not one that I can remember.
Or Ronin Warriors. I never saw that either. But
I'm thinking that one came out probably in our teens.
Oh, okay.
Late teens, probably. Not something.
That's probably why.
I'm familiar with the name, but I can't say that I've watched an episode.
And then there's one that's King Arthur and the Knights of Justice. Now, if I remember correctly, this is the one where they were a football player, like a football team that falls through the earth and ends up back in time during King Arthur era. And so because they're already a team, they start being the Knights of the Round Table or something like that.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, that
sounds. And if they haven't made it, they should do that now.
Yeah, that must have been a really good dream if it's not what it was about. Yeah. There's also a Tailspin, which is super awesome.
Was there anything on the list or not on the list that you're surprised that people didn't bring up?
X-Men. Nobody mentioned X-Men in all of their comments. There's a lot of like Batman. Animaniacs was mentioned a couple times, especially on Twitter. We had at Kiwi Games mentioned Animaniacs, specifically Pinky and the Brain, which I agree with for sure. Pinky and the Brain is the best part of Animaniacs.
Yeah.
I really do not like Slappy the Squirrel. There's not really any point for her. I just don't like her. I don't understand why she exists. But and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the recurring theme as well. But I was really surprised that nobody said X-Men, because obviously, like I said, that's my go-to favorite cartoon from my childhood.
Now, growing up, and I think that's a part of my biggest problem with the new X-Men franchise, is that, I grew up with the blue and yellow suits and, Jubilee in her yellow trench coat and Wolverine in his blue and yellow spandex. And I get it that some of that stuff doesn't translate to the film, but I feel like that they could have tried harder. I can't fall in love with the franchise like I did back then because it doesn't feel visually close.
Right.
With Batman, with Superman, with the Ninja Turtles, those movies, although they do change some details about the suits or what they're wearing, they feel visually close to my childhood.
Right, definitely. I mean, you have the bat symbol, which is iconic and is on every suit, and the Superman symbol as well, which helps visually tie everything together. But also the color palette is almost the same. In Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, obviously Superman's outfit is much darker now. DC was doing that era where they were trying to make everything grittier, but they've come out recently and talked about how they're not going to be doing that anymore, which surprises me after seeing the Wonder Woman. I'm gonna edit that out. The Wonder Woman trailer. I probably won't edit that out. We'll leave it in. But that's still pretty dark. But you're right, though, with the X-Men franchise, the visual continuity is not there at all. I do still enjoy the franchise, though, and that's something we can talk about maybe at a different time. I don't know. But.
Have you watched any of the newer X-Men cartoons that they've tried to reboot or bring back in?
Yeah, there was the X-Men Evolution, I think, is the one in the early 2000s that they brought up, and there's some good episodes. They brought Kitty Pryde, Spike, the Nightcrawler's in it. He's a younger Nightcrawler. It's almost, and they had Rogue as well, but she's younger as well. It's like they try to reboot the franchise using the same characters and adding some. I bought the DVDs when I was in high school because I thought this was going to be fun, but I'd say probably more than half of the episodes were not memorable at all. Whereas looking back at the original series, I can remember full storylines and that's the thing about those. They took more than one episode to tell the storyline too. Many times the show is to be continued, and you'd sit there, oh no, I have to wait till next Saturday. Like, I just sat here for half an hour, and now I got to wait a week for another half hour. And
it seems like they did that a lot.
They would last 4 episodes. I recently found the same X-Men animated series online, and some of these episodes are 4 or 5 episodes long, and the story just goes all the way through them. So it's just a different time for storytelling, I think, for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of the things that are on this list, you can go online and find. I know, especially the Justice League Unlimited, your Batman the animated series, stuff like that, you can find on Netflix, Hulu. So if you're interested, you can go back on and find those and rewatch some of the things that you liked. And even for kids nowadays who haven't gotten a chance to really get their hands on some of this stuff, you can go back and find those on a lot of the subscription services, or just Googling it and bring it up that way.
Yeah, definitely. And when you subscribe to services like Netflix and Hulu, you give back a little bit to the people that created those art as well.
On to the next
thing. The next thing we wanted to talk about is what you're all here for. Candy canes. No? Okay.
No. Maybe. Depends on the flavor. So I went to see Mag 7 this weekend.
Hey, so did I. That works out really well. Or else it'd be hard for us to talk about it.
It would have made the show awkward if you hadn't.
Yeah.
But I guess since we both did, we might as well go ahead and talk about it. What'd you think of the movie, Peter?
Well, okay. I'll just give you guys a background. I went and saw it at noon on Friday with 8 other people in the theater, and it was definitely worth my time there. I enjoyed every minute of it.
I enjoyed it a lot, and I think that there's some good things and bad things, but you can say that about every movie you see.
Yeah, definitely.
But there was more good than there were bad. Denzel is Denzel. I think you're going to get a good performance out of Denzel actually, Denzel is so good that his mediocre is better than everyone else's. Like, you can't. He is so good that I think it'll probably be hard for him to win another Oscar because people will go, "Oh, well,
that's just what he
Denzel.
does. Yeah,
that's just Denzel."
He just does it. It's okay.
Like, that is how good he is. So good that it just seems like he wakes up, does this character, goes back to sleep, and does another character the next day. I want to say more about him, but it's just that he's just that good at everything in every role he's in that there's nothing really bad to say, and everything that's great has already been said.
Yeah. Well, and then further on the cast, I have a affinity towards Chris Pratt because I look like him apparently, mainly because I have a beard. I think that's the only thing that makes me look like him. But
that ought to drive the subscribers up.
Yeah, pretty much. If you are a fan of Chris Pratt, then you might as well subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Ladies, my partner looks like Chris Pratt. Subscribe to the channel.
But yeah, I think Chris Pratt gave a really great performance as well. Some of the lines that he delivered, it kind of felt Guardian of the Galaxy, Parks and Recreation, Chris Pratt, but which kind of took it out of the Western a little bit. But those were so few and far between that it is very forgivable. I almost glazed over them without even noticing that it happened.
Well, and I really like Chris Pratt also. I was thinking while I was watching the movie is that Chris Pratt right now is a bona fide superstar.
Right.
And if he's not completely there, he is sitting on the ledge of superstardom. Tell me right now, who has a better career track going forward than what Chris Pratt does right now? With the Jurassic Park movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, aligning himself with Denzel Washington. These are things that you do when it's going to cause you to be around for a while. And just about everything that he's done, even this new movie, Passengers, if you saw the trailer for that.
Yeah, well, the trailer before the film looks great.
I'm on board. You align yourself with Jennifer Lawrence, who's probably the most popular female movie star there is right now. This is how you set up a career for superstardom.
Definitely. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
And I think, there's the humor. I was okay with it. It didn't take away from the movie. It didn't make the movie silly. It was, the levity was good when it needed to be.
Right, and that was the character that he was playing, the gambler. I saw the original film before I had seen this new film, and if I remember correctly, you saw it after, correct?
I did see it after.
Okay.
I went back and watched it.
So when I was watching this new film with Magnificent Seven, I remember back to the old film. The gambler character was quite light in his attitude towards what was going on. Everything was still kind of a joke, and he was definitely trying to be a ladies' man, as like Chris Pratt's character was. And so I thought that was really nice for me to see that parallel, even though a lot of the characters have different names and different story. And then we have new characters as well in this new film, like Billy Rox and Jack Horn. They aren't anything like, well, that's not true. Billy Rox's character has a lot of similarities with a character from the 1960 film, but like Jack Horn, the tracker, he's a brand new character, and he brought so much to the story, I think.
Well, how did you feel about his voice?
It was perfect.
Early on, I didn't know if I was going to be able to make the whole film through it. And I think that during the filming, they had him tone it down because it was really screechy and high-pitched when we first meet him. And then
he just got hit in the head with a rock, so and fell off a cliff.
I can see that, but early on, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do the entire movie with him in that voice. Going back to Chris Pratt, though, you know who Chris Pratt reminds me of?
Me.
You, yes. Obviously. But also, he is a better version of Ryan Reynolds.
Ooh.
That is really who he reminds me of. So, he's got some of the characters that are kind of the same, or he's kind of playing in the same, but he is a better version of Ryan Reynolds. And I said that, if you remember, I think it was Blade 3, where there's stories that came out that there was a big rip in the cast because of how much joking and how non-serious Ryan Reynolds was during the shooting, to the point where the movie was almost shut down because the cast just did not get along. And I don't think that Chris Pratt goes too far with it. When he's serious, he needs to be, and he's just a guy that, if he wasn't a movie star, he's just a guy you like.
Right.
And that is the feel I get from Chris Pratt.
Well, it's definitely the persona that he portrays to everyone, and I feel like that it's not just a portrayal, but that's who he is as well. I've seen many interviews with him where he says things like he won't do a film that his kids won't watch, he won't let his kids watch. And I think that that kind of moral and personality is getting you further in Hollywood these days, because you're not you are who you are, and people will start to respect that about you. And that's why I think Chris Pratt is getting so many more roles than Ryan Reynolds. And Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool, and they have a second Deadpool coming out, and he's played a lot of superheroes in a lot of roles. But I feel like currently Chris Pratt is doing 2 films for every one that Ryan Reynolds is doing.
I can't wait to see Passengers. Like I said, there was a movie I didn't know anything about, really.
Right.
But right now, if Chris Pratt's in it, I'm sold. Right. I'm gonna give it a shot.
Right. We're definitely gonna see it, and then we'll put it on our ranking system.
So, the cast in general, how'd you feel about the ensemble?
In comparing him to the old one, or then just in general by himself?
Just in general.
I really think that they mesh really well. I feel like there was not a time that I thought, oh, this actor is really trying to stand out from the others, or there wasn't. And I think part of that is the writing as well. The writing was really well done, in that everyone had about equal screen time. Everyone, when they were on screen with another character, had interactions with them. There was no one that was just left off in the shadows, I would say.
Well, and there, like I said, there were some good and some bad things about it. Denzel, great. Chris Pratt, great. The cast in general was great. The levity, the humor, they broke it up when they needed to. And I like that they paid homage to not only the Western original version of the film, but I've also seen the Japanese version, Seven Samurai. Okay. And watching all 3 of them, even the original Western version, they paid homage to the classic Japanese version. They brought that into this new Magnificent Seven, where there were scenes that mirrored both films. There were characters that mirrored characters from both films, and I really enjoyed being able to go back and watch both films and see where they tried to pair those together and what they took from the film and what they added. It was great that they added some new stuff,
right?
A new direction to the film, but it was also great that they were willing to go back and pay homage to films that, most of us out there know that this is not an original idea.
Right.
So it was great to go back and see them pay homage. Now, I will say the bad is that it's a Western. And not bad because it's a Western, but they didn't break any new ground.
It's still making a Western. The setting's all the same. The story, obviously, it is a retelling, so the plot line is similar to the other 2 films as well. But we also have the same kind of characters that are in every Western. We have our gunslinger, we have our jokester, and we have our well-traveled character, which is Ethan Hawke's character, Goodnight Robichaux. He's been well traveled, and then that was an interesting character. I thought, definitely.
I liked his character too. How I will say that I was pretty sure at a certain point before they even got to it that he was going to run off.
Yeah,
they kind of gave that away early on. I felt like that there was a scene where, and I guess we should have said this a long time ago, but spoilers. There was a scene where he was hearing voices, and he was in the bar, and his buddy was trying to calm him down. I feel like they did that, and then they just kind of left it. There's not a whole lot of explanation. They just kind of moved on from it, and I would have liked more to find out more what was going on.
Well, I think that they kind of fix that when he's teaching the villagers or the townsmen how to shoot, and they're all missing it, and he's yelling at them, you gotta hate what you're firing at, and all that. And then Chris Pratt, his character comes up and is just like, oh, why don't you show him how to do it? You're so good. Good night. Why don't you show him? He's the best sharpshooter from the war. why don't you show him? And he pushes him to that edge where he does finally shoot, and it blows everyone away. But I think Chris Pratt pushing him to that edge and Ethan Hawke's character continually trying to not go there, that says to me, that he's a troubled man who's trying to forget his past, and that's what those voices definitely are. That past coming back to haunt him.
Going back to my question I asked you just a minute ago, did you think it was him or someone else that was going to betray them or run off? Because you knew it was coming.
Yeah, no.
I knew it was coming the entire movie.
When they got to setting up everything in the town, you could tell it was good night. Good night was going to be gone. It's not hard to see, and I think that is just because of the character trope that he was playing, because he's the troubled man. And then I knew the second that he left that he was going to come back, and
we knew
he was going to come back in with the shotgun and blow everyone away.
Which was the typical Western thing.
Right.
My question that I was thinking about while watching the movie was, why are the villains always more loyal than the good guys? Villains, they're getting murdered in droves by 7 cowboys and villagers, and none of them go, hey, I'm not fighting for this rich guy anymore.
Yeah, I'm just going to go the other way.
They all just keep running on in. It's always in every movie, and it's not just Westerns. The person that gives up or the betrayer is always on the team of the good guys. You saw it in Suicide Squad. You see it in every movie when there's an ensemble cast that someone from the good guys give up.
Well, that's how you build tension, though. I mean, you have your team, and you've been following them the whole film, and if you're following them, then you start to feel part of that group. And then how would you feel if one of your friends left you all of a sudden? That's what the whole story becomes then at that point. Like, this is now your friend, and now he's left you. And that's where that comes in, definitely. It's the immersive experience of a film.
And I get all that. I'm just saying, if I were on the other side and I was one of the villains, about halfway through, I'm going, hey, so I'm not with these guys?
Yeah.
I'm probably just going to go back home.
Yeah, or maybe I'm just going to lay here for a second and hope that there's no dynamite underneath where I'm at right now, because it seems like you guys got it everywhere. So I'm just gonna lay here.
How many times do you have to run down the hill and watch just mounds of explosions and things blow up before you go, maybe we didn't think this.
Yeah, maybe we should go the other way. I don't know, not directly straight through the town. Again, it's a film, and villains are not ever that smart, right? Stormtroopers. Let's just go there real fast.
Well, you can win anytime you're making an argument about villains not being very smart, the trump card is always Stormtroopers. You can always win the argument with that. So, besides the main characters, what'd you feel about there was the Indian, the Mexican fugitive? How did you feel like, they didn't get as much screen time as everyone else, or they didn't have as many lines.
Right.
How did you feel like they evened out the cast?
I was thinking about that earlier today because I knew we were going to be talking about it. And I was thinking really the fact that they had an Indian on both sides. And something that did bother me about the movie is that the Native American on the villain side, he's definitely Navajo. Just from my experience with Native American people, he's definitely a Navajo, and the one on the good side, he's a Comanche. Mm-hmm. And so there's a scene where he kills the Navajo, and he says in Comanche that he's a disappointment or a disgrace, and I just that kind of bothered me because their languages are not similar, and that's just getting beyond the fantasy of the film, obviously. But back to your question about how I feel about them being in the cast and their screen time. They were definitely, well, for the Comanche, he was a last minute addition, it feels like, and he kind of stayed that way the whole time, which throws back almost to the 1960 film when they have the young Mexican kid that follows them, and then they decide, okay, well, you can join us. He does later on become a little bit more integral to the victory, but than the Comanche does, but I think that he was supposed to be there to mirror that character, but giving a new twist to it.
Mm-hmm. And they did that also in the Japanese version As far as you've got a character that didn't quite make the team, that's kind of following them around. I didn't feel that they necessarily did that quite. They didn't focus on that quite as much in this version, which I'm okay by that. I wrote a story or an article for comicbookmovie.com about remakes, and in that article, I talked about how I don't necessarily need a remake that goes word for word on what the original did.
Right.
If you remake the story, great, but give me a different take on it. And and people like them, love them, or hate them. The remakes, everything we get is a remake. When you recast James Bond, you're remaking the franchise.
Yeah.
So give me something different or a different take when you're doing it. And I did enjoy that. I enjoyed some of the smaller characters in the group. It was a little weird at the end during the final scenes where Denzel is chasing him into the church. And everyone just kind of disappears.
Right.
And I'm sitting in the theater and I'm counting on my hand all of the team members, we'll call them, from the Magnificent Seven who've I've watched die on the screen. And I'm going, I've got Denzel standing here, but there's two others missing. Because I'm wondering why the entire town has just cleared out at that point. What do you think about when they pulled out the Gatling gun?
Well, it was in the trailer, so I knew that it was going to happen, but it was still pretty awesome.
It was awesome. I was wondering, you've got everybody, and they run and they stand behind these rickety wood walls, and they're watching the bullets come through the wall. You should probably stand somewhere else. That's not going to happen. Yeah, they were getting mowed down standing behind these rickety walls. I mean, come on. You got to notice that the guy right next to you just got blown to bits. You should probably move.
Yeah, or stay down. That was one thing. And a lot of them kept getting up, and it's like, okay, well, this seems like a plot tool now that they're going to get rid of all the townspeople because they're dumb enough to stand up when their bullets are being shot at them at a high rapid fire. Other than that, the Gatling gun was amazing. And because of the Gatling gun and the people that were running it, one of Chris Pratt's best lines, he said, "I always have the best luck with one-eyed jacks." It's so good.
Did you think, after seeing the 60s Western, were you surprised by them killing off Chris Pratt's character?
I was very surprised because in the 60s version, first of all, in the 60s version, I had only seen it once before, and I had not known what was going to happen at the end, and I was very surprised at the many deaths that we had from the main characters. And so going into this film, I knew, okay, well, if it's a Magnificent Seven film, they're going to kill off these main characters. But in the 60s version, we have Yul Brynner and
Steve McQueen.
And Steve McQueen's characters are left at the end. You had just the two, and they're the ones that started it all, and then they're the ones that finish it all. And so I thought this time, okay, Denzel and Chris Pratt, they're going to be the ones there at the end. And then they went off and killed Chris Pratt, and I thought, are they just going to kill everybody this time? Like, is there no one safe anymore?
Now, before we went and saw this movie, you had told me a story about, after seeing the 70s or the 60s version, that you were wondering if the finale to the film would have the same type of beat that it did. Were you surprised by what you saw after seeing the 2016 version?
I think in the 60s version, the deaths, they all happened very quickly. They're like a surprise. You didn't see it coming unless you knew the story already. And all of a sudden you just realize, wait a second, they're killing everybody. But in the 2016 version, I think the deaths are spread out too much for it to be a surprise. First we have Jack Horn getting killed with the arrows, and then minutes later, then you have Goodnight and Billy getting taken out. It wasn't back-to-back killings. There was a lot of stuff that happened in between, and so I think the pacing I think that they were trying to go for more emotional reactions, because you had a story and then death, and then a story and then a death. Whereas in the 60s version, there was a lot of surprise to it. You probably didn't see it coming, and all of a sudden everyone's dying. So I guess that's maybe my take on it.
What about their motivation You know, the good guy. There's a damsel in distress. The good guys take on this journey that the odds are stacked against them. Most of them don't know each other. They're all tied to Sam in some way, except for the Indian. Most of the other characters he had known in some sort of way, and that's why he tracks and seeks them out. Did you find that you couldn't understand certain characters' motivations for joining in?
No, I think a lot of their motivations paralleled the ones from the 60s. You know, we have Denzel or Sam Chisholm, whose motivation really isn't explained until much later in the film, but it's basically revenge for his family. Then we have Chris Pratt's Josh Faraday. His motivation is pretty much the same as the other gamblers. He's just there for a ride. You know, he's like,
he was
whatever.
There for his horse.
Yeah, he was there for the horse. You know, in this one, in the original, he's just like, well, I'm not doing anything. Might as well. And then the others, it seemed more like their motivation was they're doing a favor for a friend. Then they didn't really have any stake in what was going on, but Sam came and asked them for help, and they joined in, and I think that starts to build the relationship that we have with the characters right from the beginning, because they're doing something for a friend, and so you feel that you can trust Sam and you can trust the other members of the team implicitly.
All in all, I did enjoy the film. I liked it. I would recommend it. Like I said, it's your typical Western. You're not gonna get to the theater and see things that you haven't seen before.
Right.
But you'll be entertained.
On that, you said you recommend it. We just kind of have a scale that we'd like to introduce to you. That scale that we're gonna try to judge all our films on. It's was it 5-point scale now? No, 4 points.
We narrowed it down to 4.
It's a 4 point. So it's gonna be, go see it in theaters. That's the top one. Obviously, we're not saying that this is going to be an Oscar award-winning film, but we're saying it's worth your time to go out and watch this in the theater if you're going to see it. The next step down would be rent it. Obviously, you know what that means. And then the third one is, if it happens to be on a Saturday afternoon and you don't feel like watching golf, I guess it might be a good thing to watch. And finally, the lowest rating that we have for films is find something else to do. So even if that thing comes on Saturday afternoon,
go mow your lawn.
Yeah, go out and do something else.
Anything else you could do would be better than watching that film.
Yeah, so it's watching in the theater, rent it. If it happens to be on, watch it, or find something else to do. That's our scale.
So, Peter, what do you give The Magnificent Seven?
I give it theater. Go and see this movie in the movie theater. And I think mostly because the sound design is really great. That's something that I care about in the theater. So if you have a home theater, then it's going to be good as well at home. But the explosions and the gunfire and even just the quieter parts where it's just dialogue, everything is crisp. But also the storytelling that happens by being in a theater like that it's more important to see it there. What about you, Terry? How do you rate it?
I would say go see it in the theaters. Just to kind of sum up what we said earlier, you're going to get your typical Denzel. Chris Pratt is a budding superstar. I thought the movie was good. I can't say that I wouldn't actually go see it again. Now, I usually save stuff like that for Superman versus Batman. I usually save those going to see it multiple times for
Star
that. Star Wars. But I would see this movie again.
Yeah, because it's a fun movie. Even if you have seen it once, it's still going to be fun. And that's another thing about it being a remake is that we already know the story. If you saw Seven Samurai, if you've seen The Magnificent Seven from the 60s film, the characters might have different names. The main plot is slightly different, but really it's the same story that we've all already seen. But the way that they portray it, it's just fun. Everything about it makes me want to go back and see it again.
I'm going to give you a hidden gem about this film. There's a character at the beginning who is the husband to the damsel in distress, we'll call her. His name is Matt Bomer. If you go online, there are a lot of fan casts that they've been trying to cast him as Batman for years. I think he's another guy that's kind of in the background, but if he hits the right spots, he's going to be a superstar in the future also. I'd like to see him. They're supposed to be doing this ensemble cast for the next Green Lantern, the Green Lantern Corps. I think he'd be perfect cast in one of those spots.
Yeah, I could see that. He definitely has the look for a Green Lantern type superhero. I don't know much about him. I'm trying to pull up IMDb, but my internet's really slow. So
now he's on some show on the USA Network that has gotten pretty good reviews from what I hear. But I think he's another one that if he picks the right films, he can line himself up, especially to get an offer to take on one of these superhero movies.
oh, he's the guy from White Collar. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
Don't watch it, but I hear it's good.
Yeah, I hear that's a good show. I think my wife watched it. She liked it a lot. It's one of those type of shows that have intrigue and puzzles and mental capacities that I don't use very much.
So all in all, we both say go see this movie in the theater. It's a really good popcorn movie. You'll enjoy it. Even if you're not a huge fan of the Western, that genre, I still feel like it's something that you won't feel like you wasted your money when you go and see it.
So, Terry, do you have anything else coming up in the future that you're excited about?
Well, there's some TV shows. The Walking Dead is going to be starting up here in a few weeks. Not very excited about Fear the Walking Dead ending.
Wait, are you not excited about Fear the Walking Dead ending because you want more to happen, or are you not excited about there being more episodes?
Let's just say if Fear the Walking Dead was in our rating system, I would probably give it the if it happens to be on. I watch it when I have nothing else to do. And that's as much as I'll go from there, because we'll do a lot of talking about that, especially once The Walking Dead starts and kind of compare the two shows. But it's an if it happens to be on. Luke Cage starts September 30th.
Yeah.
That's one I'm really excited about. If you've watched any of the Netflix Marvel shows, the Defenders shows as they call them, I think this one is going to be just as great as the others.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be talking about Luke Cage next week.
Next week, yep,
At least the first couple episodes.
We're going to do a review on the first couple episodes, kind of talk about maybe our background with the character, some of Luke Cage's history with Marvel, some of the other up-and-coming shows, and in the Defenders series in general. They greenlit The Punisher. I think that one will be good, too. So we'll kind of just go over the first couple episodes in Luke Cage next week.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to Doctor Strange. It's coming out. That looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
I feel like this end of the year, and maybe I'm wrong, is one of the better year-end movie, TV shows that we've had in a long time. The list could go on from the different things that I watched, from The Flash to Arrow, Supergirl being on the CW, and them kind of creating an entire world there. So I'm interested in a lot of things. Rogue One is right at the top of my list. I cannot wait till that comes out. One of these shows, I'll tell you about my theory for a Darth Vader standalone film. I've got an idea. It would be amazing. Somebody should do it. We'll save it for another episode, though.
Well, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. We are at Panel of Amateurs. And also you can hashtag us at hashtag Panel of Amateurs as well, if you forgot the @ symbol instead of a hashtag. Also follow us on Facebook. Again, Panel of Amateurs on Facebook. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Panel of Amateurs. It's pretty easy when everything's called the same thing. You can just Google us, Panel of Amateurs. Panel of Amateurs.
And I'm going to Jedi mind trick you until you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, but you will subscribe to our YouTube channel.
He's waving his hand right now. I want everyone to know this. He is waving his hand saying, you will subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Like immediately.
Now.
Do not think about it. You should have done it when I first asked you at the beginning of the episode. But I'll forgive you. I'll let you do it now. Go ahead and like, subscribe, offer us money. However you're feeling, you do what you need to do as long as you're liking, subscribing, and possibly offering us money.
All right, we didn't talk about how to end it. Is there anything we're going to say at the end?
Well, Peter, thanks for a great show. We'll see you back next week when we talk about Luke Cage.
All right, Terry, I'll see you next week.